The question I would have is, I lived in Iran for 10 years. I don't know if you guys have lived in a Muslim nation before. You lived, obviously, you lived in Morocco. Have you lived in a Muslim,
No.
You're here. So I lived in Iran 10 years as a Christian family, and we would go to church, and I went to Christian school, and then we escaped and went to Germany, lived at a refugee camp with a lot of different sects from different parts of the world who were escaping. They were either escaping communism or they were escaping not feeling safe, persecution for their religion, what they believed in. They didn't have the freedom, they left. Why is it? This is a question that's been brought up when I'm crowdsourcing what questions you want us to ask the guests that are here today. If it's purely statistical, why are more Muslims moving to Christian nations and not Christian nations moving to Muslim nations? Why do you think that is?
It's economics, pure economics. If you look at Christians that move to Saudi and the Gulf, there's a huge influx of Christians from the Philippines, from Africa, from Eastern Europe that flock to the Gulf countries, Muslim countries. Why? Because of GDP, because of the economy. The influx of people of all religions and cultures to the US, to Australia, to Europe, it's purely because of economic opportunity, not because of there's some kind of better way of life. The way of life in the US, and I can talk to you because you lived 10 years in Iran, the culture of traditional societies, especially Muslim societies, is much more conducive to family. It's more of a family, community-based life as opposed to an individualistic, rat race, everyone is out for himself type of lifestyle that you live in the West. And that's because of the hegemony that we're talking about, because of liberal secularism, because of this pursuit of happiness at the expense of all else. When you have a religion that values family, marriage, look at the divorce rates. Look at how, I have 5 sons of my own. I'm very worried about, will they even be able to find a wife who will be faithful to them and who will want to have children, my grandchildren, who will be faithful. Look at the divorce rates. Look at the infidelity rates. Look at all of the social problems that are infecting Western societies. Why is that? I'd argue it's on the basis of leaving traditional Christianity, leaving traditional Islam, reforming these religions. That's the problem. Look at someone like Reza Aslan. You interviewed him,
I had him
right?
on, yeah.
And you had a brilliant comment. You said that, Reza, when you're talking, I feel like you're an atheist. You're arguing, I don't think that you're actually a Muslim. Like, you're not talking like you're a Muslim. You're talking like this progressive, liberal, atheist type person. And that's what's happening to everyone because of these political forces. And we have to resist that. We have to resist those kinds of influences in order to preserve marriage, preserve family, preserve community. That exists in the Muslim world, but it's being eroded.
So why are you still here? Why are you in America? Why don't you go to a Muslim nation?
I would like to do that, but the thing is that the West has declared war on every traditional society. If you don't implement Western-style liberal human rights, quote unquote, like you don't legalize homosexuality, you don't legalize transgender, you don't legalize feminism, all of these things that are destroying marriage and family, we're going to bomb you. We're going to sanction you. We're going to starve your people. It's not safe for Muslims to be in Muslim countries. It's not safe for traditional Christians. Traditional Christians quoting the Bible within Europe are being put in prison for quoting the Bible. They'll literally quote a verse from Leviticus, or they'll talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. They're put in prison. This is a war on all traditional religions. And there's not a safe place for a traditional religious person in the world today because of this dominant global power.
So your argument is economy, capitalism, a capitalistic society. So then the question would be, why don't Muslim regions accept the principles of a capitalistic free society to be able to attract other Christians? Because when you hear some stories, but I got that. Brother Rachid, do you have a response to him on this question, specifically the question I'm asking? Why do Christian nations attract Muslims, but Muslim nations not attract Christians?
He said the economy is the first reason,
yes.
but other reasons exist too. I have seen so many Saudi girls leaving Saudi Arabia, going to Canada and the US and the UK, asking for asylum because they don't have the same rights and they are forced to stay as a second-class status. Women is not treated well in Muslim countries. I have seen people who are leaving Morocco and other places because they don't have freedom of speech. And if you say anything against Islam in Egypt or Morocco, or for me, for example, why I left Morocco. I love Morocco. I would love to live among my family, but I left not because of the economy. I was doing well, but because I don't have freedom of religion. And there are many countries are like that. If you open the borders in Europe and the US, you have almost probably, I can't guess, but like probably 90% of Muslims will go to the West, not just because of money. It's because of other reasons. They are oppressed there. And our brothers, they have their solution to what will live is not what I am here. Of course, we have a problem in the West, but the solution they are given is worse than what we have today. For example, LGBTQ, whatever, they will kill them if we bring, let's say, let them govern with Islam today. They will throw them from a higher building. That's their punishment. I'm not with that. I'm not either this, the two extremes, either this or that. Islam is not going to give a solution. Why we have human rights in the West? Why everything we are enjoying today, it came from the West. For example, women's rights came from the West. Abolishing slavery came from the West. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion came from the West. You name it. Just give me anything. Democracies came from the West. So they want us to live under an authoritarian system, and you cannot even question it. And if you say anything against it, you will be condemned to death. For example, if I say Islam is not the right way to God, I cannot say that in a Muslim country. I will be punished for that. So we are enjoying freedom of speech, freedom of religion, democracy. We can say our opinion. We can have a podcast like that without a problem. Guess what? In Morocco, when I became a Christian, we met as Christians in closed doors. We couldn't sing. We couldn't baptize people. We couldn't name our kids Christian names. You cannot name him Luke or Mark or anything. You have to name him Muhammad and Omar and Abu Bakr. You can't name them Christian names.
This is not true.
It's true. I lived it.
It's not. In Islamic law. Okay, do you know Ahkam Ahl al-Dhimma? Do you know the principles?
I'm not Ahl al-Dhimma. I'm an apostate.
Yeah, you don't talk about other Christians. Christians can name their children. Okay, you lived in a Muslim country.
Okay, let me
you be
finish.
named Patrick, or was that against the law?
Let me finish. I am a convert from Islam to Christianity,
That's
and
different.
I had hundreds like me, girls and boys. We were gathering. We were afraid of police. And we got arrested many times. We got interrogated.
So let me get this straight. So I want to understand what both of you are saying. So for us, I was born in a Muslim country. My name is Patrick. My sister's name is Paulette. You're saying if a Muslim converts to Christian, you can't just name your kids anything. You have to name them those specific names.
Yes.
And you're okay with that? You think that's normal?
I said something even more than that. I said that the punishment is death penalty. So forget it. That's what we talked about
at the beginning.
right?
Apostles totally get it. So for you, it's not even your level for that is for somebody to go. But why is that?
But that's not the treatment of all Christians.
So I totally get that. But
Jews.
Why do you believe that? Why do you believe if a Muslim becomes a Christian is the death penalty? Why do you believe
this is what I want to explain. Is that first of all, this is found in every religion. It's found in every culture. The idea that you have to have punishments for defection, meaning that if you abandon the group, you are threatening the group. And that's why every business, every university, every society has community guidelines, for example.
Yeah.
If you violate the community guidelines, it's not called blasphemy, it's called a violation of community guidelines. You're expelled from that community, you face consequences. But it goes beyond that because you have restrictions on your speech, right? We can't look at this YouTube channel. I can't say certain things on this live stream. Otherwise, the video will be banned. Your channel will get in trouble. And then you can be prosecuted. You can face all kinds of consequences. Again, go back to your Glenn Greenwald interview, your interview with Whitney Webb. Look at the power structures that restrict speech. They restrict thought. Why? In order to preserve the power structure. Every religion has this. Traditional Christianity, that's why heretics were punished. That's why apostates were punished in
Let me
Buddhism.
ask a follow-up on that.
Sure,
so when you say to me, You know, I've interviewed almost any of the major living mobsters. I've had them on the podcast before. I don't know if that's your stuff that you would watch, but I've interviewed a lot of them. Sammy the Bull, Michael Francis, a lot of these guys. Okay, so I can see you with your last name. Yes. Yeah. So when I interview these guys, one of the things that they have, and Sammy is a very much of he says, look, I'm a mafioso. I'm a true mafioso is what I am. Till today, he's in his late 70s. He still says that, right? If you step away from the life, like you could get killed if you step away from the life, right? Okay, you chose this life. You celebrated when you become a made man. Now you want to leave? You got the benefits of being a made man. Now you want to leave? We're going to take your life, if based on the principles that they followed. But that's the mafia. For somebody that may say, well, then Islam is Islam following some of the mafia philosophies that if you choose to leave, you deserve to lose your life? Don't you think that's a bit extreme?
I would say the problem with the mafia is criminal activity. It's not with this principle. This is a good principle. That's why they're able to be so organized. That's why they're able to be so successful.
That's the argument.
And you have nations that are run in the same way. You have to preserve the nation by punishing defection because it threatens the unity of the group. It threatens the way of life.
That's tough, though, man. That's that's
the law. That's what exists.
I totally understand that. All I'm saying is that's tough because, okay, so let me get to more the business side, the next side.
Let me just add a little bit to it.
Go for it.
I will be killed, my kids will be taken, and my wife will be taken. Just to add to the list in an Islamic system.
Let me continue with this. Let me continue with this a little bit because this is getting interesting to me. So if in insurance, there's two ways to build, or real estate, there's two ways guys build their real estate and their insurance companies. Let me explain this, and you'll see where I'm going with this question. One is there's guys that steal from other people. Okay. And I'll say, oh, you train those guys, I'll take your agents. You train those guys, I'll take your agents. You're getting 60%, I'll give you 80% if you come to my company. So their entire business model is to take from others, right? And then they're always capped because somebody else is not going to come and say, he gave you 80, I'll give you 100. And then so now they go to a different guy. And then the other guy will say, he gave you 100, I'll give you 110. Then they'll realize there's only 130. So how much more is left to do? I'll give you 115 if you come to me 5 more. Okay, I'll come to you. And then eventually, you're stuck. You're not going to go anywhere, right? Okay. So these agencies are not baptism agencies. They're converting agencies. I'll convert you to me by me giving you a better life or better heaven or better, dream that I'm selling to you, right? For me, the way I see it is and then the other side is guys that recruit people from other industries and they make them realtors. So I'm working at Sears. You should consider getting a real estate license. I convert you. You're a nurse. You should think about being a realtor. I become a realtor. So you understand the two examples I'm giving. I'm recruiting other realtors. I'm converting somebody into being a realtor. Hence, religion, Muslim. I'm targeting Christians to convert them. No, I'm converting people that are, becoming Muslims or just we're having more kids and that's how we're going to grow a religion. Okay. So the criticism and fear that a lot of Christians will say, non-Muslims will say is, if we go the way we do right now, one day Muslims are going to run the world. Do you not fear that? And you'll hear that. Okay. And by the way, it's a fair argument because right now the number is, give or take, the Muslim population worldwide, I think is around 1.7 billion. And it's expected by 2060 to grow by 74% to 3.1 billion. Today, they're 24.1% of the world population. By 2060, you'll be 31.1%. These are some real numbers that they're increasing. And Christians will say, well, are you not worried about that? Are you not worried about that? Are you not worried about that? Okay. So then my argument becomes, because I'm a data guy, Muslim women have 2.9 kids per woman. Christians are around 2.5, 2.6. Non-Muslims are 2.2. And the replacement game, you need to have 2.1.
Yeah. So
2.1 is a replacement game. 2.2 is non-Muslims. Christians are 2.6, and then you have Muslims eating away 2.9. By the way, in the 90s, you were at 4.3, 4.5. In 1990, 1995, 30 years ago, you were at 4.5, 4.3. So where am I going with this? So where I'm going with this is if this goes the way it does, and they do what they do, it is very natural that the Senate, that Congress, that House, that governors are going to be ran by Muslims. Right now, you have 3 that are there. You mentioned the names earlier. There used to be 1 in the past. That's 4. But we had 82 in the midterm election who are Muslims that got elected to city, state, different kind of jobs that they had record-breaking ever, right? So if I don't look at it from the faith standpoint, if I don't look at it from the religion standpoint, if I don't look at it from the argument of who's right, who's wrong, Muhammad, Jesus, if I don't look at it from there, I would simply say their strategy of growing is kicking Christians' tail. So then Christians can either sit there and complain about it or they can do something about it. But Christians don't want to have that many kids. Christians are not having 4, 5, 6 kids. He has 5. You said you have 5 sons? Five sons? Okay, he's got 5 sons. I don't know how many of you have 5 sons at this table. I got 2 and 2 girls. 5 sons is going to be the rest of us, right? If he's going to keep having these kids. So what is your solution as a Christian? And I'm purely talking business right now. The business of religion is what I'm talking right now. According to the business of religion, they're going to win. And there's nothing Christians can do about it. By the business. You can sit and argue the faith all you want. They're getting their people and their kids baptized because their job isn't recruiting Christians to become Muslims. They've only converted 20,000. That's not a lot. It's not a big number. But they're getting more kids and they're raising their kids with the loyalty to the parents and they're following that faith and they're growing bigger and we're not doing that. What are your thoughts to that?
Well, if you're asking me what the solution is, obviously Christians have to recover a sense of their faith and a sense of what's at stake. Because what you're talking about will happen if this continues is that the United States will look like Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Iran. Those were not always the heart of the Islamic world. Those were conquered and Islamized. And the Christians were, like Rachid was saying, were made second class, made subject to all kinds of humiliating and discriminatory regulations, and had to pay a special tax that's specified in the Quran, chapter 9, verse 29. And they ultimately, most of them in those areas, and in North Africa, other areas like that, many of them thought, why am I suffering this and having to live in this way? All I have to do is convert to Islam and I can live a decent life. And most of them did. And so you have areas that were 99% Christian and now they're 99% Muslim. And so people don't realize, they look at Egypt and they say, well, that's the Islamic world. They don't realize that these things are always in flux and that exactly what happened there is beginning to happen in the West. And so I think that if Christians were to come to realize what's at stake, which would be extraordinarily difficult given the amount of propaganda and falsehood that's spread about these issues in the mainstream, then they might begin to realize that they need to take
What's the solution, though? What's the next steps? What is the solution from your standpoint?
They have to have larger families, certainly, and have to meet the dawah, the proselytizing initiatives, and be able to answer all the objections, to show the inhumane aspects of
Christians
Islam.
are not that united. These guys are united.
Exactly.
So Christians are competing against each other. Muslims are more united.
I disagree to that. We have Shia, we have Sunni. They are fighting each other. They're killing each other.
Fair enough, yes.
And so they are not really united. And if you go to Salafis, they will make the Sufis as mushriks.
But would you agree that Sunnis and Shias are united at least in the values?
No.
Not necessarily because, the cousin or, that's the history part where who got the passed down. I'm talking purely values and philosophies.
You know what? Muslims will claim we are 1.7, and when you ask them details, they will be Ahmadis are not Muslims, Shia are not Muslims, and you will find just the guy in his mosque at the end instead of 1.7. I lived that. When you really scrutinize them, you will find just the guy in his mosque. They are the ones. Actually, Muhammad said his people will divide to 73 groups. And one of them only go to heaven. So 72 of them, they're just like kuffar. They are not really Muslims. So let's go back to that. Replacement rate, for example, in some countries like Iran is below 2.1. Mm-hmm. In Turkey, it's below 2.1. Mm-hmm. In others, they are below that. So there is a huge drop. For example, in Morocco, I think it was like 6.9, and now it's like 2.8 or 2.7. So next generation will be below replacement rate. So they will suffer also from
you believe that? So you believe their numbers is going to go below the Christian replacement?
I will believe they will drop because we have so many challenges, economy, so many other things. And another thing, they don't count how many people are leaving Islam. We don't have statistics. I have statistics, for example, people who write to me, according just to my show, from Morocco, from Algeria, from Iran, for example. So many people are leaving to atheism, to Christianity, to other worldviews. In Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, so they don't count that. I still count it as a Muslim in the 1.7.
Yep.
And many people like me. So if they give freedom and we do real surveys, we will have the number less. Another thing, what Islam is left? The West forced Muslims to abolish slavery, to not practice the real Islam, like amputing hands and feet and crucifying. They are now forcing them to have one wife. So Islam, the version of Islam in the Muslim world is not really what they are preaching. So what Muslims do we have? According to their standards, probably most of them are kafir.
And not only that, it's because of the death penalty for apostasy that this is unreported. But also there was a survey, and people did answer the anonymous survey recently in Iran. Only 40% of the population identified as Muslim. Now that's extraordinary, and it shows how inhumane Sharia Islamic law is.
Who ran that poll? Who?
I don't remember who ran it, but it's easy to find. We can look it up
Rob,
here.
can you look it up?
1979 to now, we've had Islamic law in Iran, and now 60% of Iranians have rejected Islam. That's because they've lived it since 1979, and they realize how much they don't like it.
Yeah, I just want to comment because they're talking a lot about the supposed disunity amongst Muslims, as if you don't have that in Christianity, right?
Oh, you do.
You do, right? So, Rachid, I know that Robert here is Eastern Orthodox. He used to be Catholic. What denomination or sect of Christianity do you belong to?
Because we are converts in Morocco, we don't follow anything. We just follow.
I'm saying,
the
like,
gospel.
do you go to a specific church?
I went to many. Orthodox, Protestant, I don't care.
Okay, so anyway, my point is you have the three main sects in Christianity, the Protestants, the Catholics, the Eastern Orthodox. Historically, they fought with each other over very, what from the outside people would think, well, why are they fighting over this? I mean, today, the Orthodox and Catholics are fighting over doctrines like the Filioque, whether or not the Holy Spirit proceeds forth from the Father and the Son, or the Father alone eternally. And they're completely divided on this, and call each other heretics and all kinds of stuff. So to act as if, right, there's this division among Sunnis and Shia, when, as I think Patrick rightly pointed out, we have much more in common in terms of our actual values. We differ in terms of certain historical doctrines, but that's another story. On the other hand, you have so many different sects within Christianity, so many different denominations, all of them disagree and consider each other to be heretics. So for you to make that accusation and critique of Islam, I just don't think is correct. It opens up.
But look at the history of the Catholics versus Protestants in Europe. Over 5 million killed in the wake of the Protestant Reformation. So, I mean, that's that applies to Christianity more than Islam. But going back to Patrick's point is that you want to grow your numbers and grow the Christian population. I want to help Christians grow, because I think a world that has more Christians is better than a world that has more atheists. But how can you have more Christians when you don't really believe in the Bible? We have the seeds of the destruction of Christianity right in this podcast, because when you look at the way that Robert and Rachid describe the Bible, they describe it as a book of fables, and it can continue to evolve.
I didn't say that.
This is going to cause apostasy. This is going to cause a decrease in faith. Like, why should I take Christianity seriously when it just evolves and it changes over time? I can't connect my practices and my beliefs as a Christian today with the historical Jesus. So why am I going to maintain myself as a Christian? And then also the whole theology, which we haven't discussed at all today. Like, the 95%. Monotheism is 80 to 90% of the world believes in monotheism, in one God. And monotheism is a central, crucial, the most important part of Islam, the belief in one God without partners. He is not like anything. This is a very powerful belief that 80 to 90% of human beings profess in this day and age. And Islam represents that in its theology and emphasizes that in its theology. But if you have a Trinity, or you have a theology that is not really clear, is Jesus God? Is there a Godhead? Is there this other system? Do we go by the Catholics, or do we go by the Orthodox? Do we go by the Protestants? You don't have a consistent theology. Sunnis and Shias, they all agree on monotheism. God is one. He is not like anything. They agree on the Quran. Yeah, there can be some theological differences and nuances between different schools, but there's not the same kind of disparity or variance between Christian sects and this idea of the Trinity, which frankly no one can understand. Like, what does it mean to be 3 in 1?
Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that. My brother is mentioning divisions between Catholics and Protestants. If I go back, there are divisions among the follower, the disciples of Muhammad, the Sahaba themselves. They killed each other. You know that the wife of Muhammad went and killed the followers of Ali in Mawqi'at al-Jamal. Thousands died among the first disciples. This didn't happen between Peter and John, by the way. And so if you go to Islam, from the beginning, they fought each other, and they had divisions from the beginning. You know that, for example, the fight over the Quran was created or eternal. They fought over that, and actually, one time they had the whole caliphate going one way, the other time they killed people who believed that. So you're trying just to give a fake picture. There are divisions, there are killings among Muslims all through history, from the beginning, from the start, which didn't happen within Christianity, by the way.
And Peter and James.
Oh, they didn't kill each other. They didn't kill each other
because they didn't have political authority.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Were they fighting each other? Yes or no?
Who killed Ottoman, for example? Who killed
Paul and Peter and James? Were they at war? Were they fighting? They
were not fighting. Okay,
they weren't.
Fight is to take an army against another one. Aisha took an army and killed people.
If you don't have an army, you don't have political power.
You
completely destroys the point.
You lost your argument. You're trying to make a false analogy here. You lost your argument. This is not an analogy.
You're not gonna win over any Christians by constructing these straw man arguments that completely misrepresent what I was saying.
I would say this, but if I may, and I want to hear your thought. Just a quick rebuttal here. My point earlier is I don't think they're trying to convert. Because I think, hear me out.
Oh, sure they are.
I'm sure they are. But I don't think that's where they rely on. The earlier point I made, their strategy on outgrowing Christians is to internally raise kids from the beginning rather than converting.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way they're going to be, able to do what they want to do. So if you want to respond, go right ahead.
Well, they are obviously converting Christians because Jake is here. But the fact is
20,000.
Islam is not really that attractive a message. And so there aren't many people who are converts. Most of the people, like you're saying, the reason why it's growing is because of polygamy and because the women have many, many more children than women in the West do. But in any case, the points that I was making you're completely misrepresenting and running with your misunderstanding and claiming I said things I never said. The point that I was making was that the Old Testament and the New Testament, as I said before, are records of an evolving understanding among the people of God. And that because of that evolving understanding, they came to realize that these things had no applicability for all people for all time. The idea that the Old Testament is not applicable for Christians is in the New Testament itself. That's actually a large preoccupation of the New Testament, that they are free, the Christians are free from the law. And so you bring up these Old Testament examples, the big difficulty you have is that nobody in the Christian world is thinking this is marching orders for today, whereas people read the Quran, unfortunately, they do think that when it says kill them wherever you find them, when you meet the unbelievers, strike the neck, and so on, they do believe that these things are marching orders for today because the Quran does not have these different stages of development. But this doesn't mean in Christianity that just anything goes. In Catholicism and Orthodoxy, you have the apostolic succession and the authority of the bishops who can authoritatively interpret the scriptures, and set the doctrines, and those doctrines have been consistent from the beginning. It's not as if it's some free-for-all.
No, they have
Patrick,
not.
Patrick,
Excuse me, you're interrupting once again, and I never
your friend
interrupted
is
you.
interrupting
No,
you.
I'm
friend-
asking a permission.
Just a second.
Okay.
Where and in Protestantism, you also have the at least ostensibly, a fidelity to the Scriptures, so that you can't just say anything goes and we're going to become LGBTQ now legitimately. Now, there are people who are doing this, and they are mostly in the Protestant purview because they don't have this authority that establishes various understandings of whether homosexuality is sinful or not, and so on, and so they can reinterpret these things, and that is a big problem. Nobody is interested in hiding any problems, but when you set up these straw man arguments and say, oh, Spencer said the Bible's fables and anything goes, you're just lying.
I never said that.
Okay.
Oh, you did?
I
didn't.
have a comment about statistics. Pew Research Center say Islam gains about as many converts as it loses in the U.S. So 0 at the end. So even the 20,000, you can just cancel them. Another thing, Elias Bayounis, he said that 75% of new Muslim converts, they leave Islam after that. So not many, 75% is a huge number. They go back because they find, usually they are fascinated with Middle Eastern, non-white religion. And yeah, it's fascinating. Our brother is wearing even the Moroccan jalaba. He likes
You like it, right?
Yeah, it's not Muslim, by the way, it's Berber. So you just think, because they're fascinated with these things and they think that's Islam, when they start digging in, oh, I didn't agree to killing apostates. I didn't know that Muhammad ordered that.
Well, what about Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate specifically cited that Muslims stand for their principles. That's why he converted, right?
Yeah,
Andrew Tate.
I'm glad he converted to Islam, so take him. I want to say something about Muslims converting to Islam. Then you find out little by little things that you didn't agree at the beginning. Every product comes with a warranty, except Islam doesn't come with a warranty. If you don't like it, your head is going to go. So that's why it's not an appealing religion, and people would start rejecting it after defining these little details inside.
I want to give them an opportunity to respond, and then we can go to the next issue.
Yeah, I'd like to respond because Robert brought up apostolic succession and claims that these doctrines have been held, since the beginning of Jesus. Jesus proclaimed his message to the apostles, and they passed it on to early church fathers, and then all the way down the line. And it's been this consistent message throughout. But on very core doctrines, which Daniel and I would actually like to spend more time on what he called the 95%, which is actually monotheism. Unfortunately, we believe that Christians, Trinitarian Christians, are representing a veiled form of polytheism. And you claim that this was the consistent message over time. Well, let's see what Justin Martyr, your own saint, says. And he's in the beginning of the 2nd century. He was born in the year 100. In his famous dialogue with Trypho, chapter 56, he says this. Let's see if his theology is the same as yours, Robert. I shall attempt to persuade you, since you have understood the scriptures, of the truth of what I say, that there is, and that there is said to be, another God and Lord, subject to the maker of all things, who is also called an angel, because he announces to men whatsoever the maker of all things, above whom there is no other God, wishes to announce them. So Justin Martyr says that Jesus is a second God, is another God, separate and distinct, and he is a lesser divinity. Now, John Baer, who I'm sure you would know is a famous Eastern Orthodox authority today, he comments on this passage, and he says this: as it is not God himself who thus appeared and spoke with man, the word of God who did all of these things, for Justin, quote, another God and Lord besides the maker of all, who is also called his angel, as he brings messages from the maker of all, above whom there is no other God. Then he says about this passage, the divinity of Jesus Christ, another God, is no longer that of the Father himself, but subordinate to it a lesser your divinity. Now, that's just one example. Justin Martyr, who you would consider a saint, you may even pray to, as the Eastern Orthodox pray to dead saints. But the reality is that your theology, according to you, on the Trinity is actually more correct than the person that you're praying to. And I can go through a whole more list on key doctrines, like the doctrine of the incarnation, the atonement, and the Trinity itself, that the early church authorities like Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Tertullian, and on up until the 4th century never preached the doctrine of the Trinity, sir. So when you make the claim that your message has been consistent without, what we see in the very beginnings on the fundamental point of who God is, you did not have the same doctrine. It took to get to the 4th century, and that's why Christianity, because at its very beginning was very comfortable with development. Oh, who is God? Is a man God? Is he God and man at the same time? So if you can have those sorts of developments, of course you can have developments about how laws are applied and whether or not we should be celebrating LGBTQ and all of that. That's your history, sir.
Not at all. Actually, no. The difference is that when it comes to LGBTQ, it's very clear that homosexuality is immoral, and that this is the consistent teaching of all the Christian groups up until quite recently. And so the ones that have changed that have departed from the faith. And you cannot have a development that contradicts what went before. The developments happen harmoniously. At the beginning of the church, there was a great deal of difficulty in understanding exactly how it was that God had become man. And so you have people trying to formulate it. And Justin Martyr tries to formulate it, and he does so erroneously. You have some assumption, probably coming from Islam, that the saints are infallible, and actually that's not the case. And so you want to quote me fathers of the church from before Nicaea all you want. The fact is that the Trinity was formulated at the Council of Nicaea in 325, and there isn't anything that was taught by the authorities in the church. Justin Martyr was a great saint, but he was not one who was formulating the doctrine and charged with the responsibility to give us what the teaching of the Christian faith is. The Ecumenical Council had that authority, and they formulated it in this way. Now, does this mean that Justin Martyr is a heretic? No, because he comes before that.
Was he wrong?
No, because he was wrong. Yeah, absolutely.
So when he said he's another God, he was wrong.
There's only one God.
Right.
We are actually monotheists. I know that Islam teaches that everybody else is a polytheist.
I think you are.
Well, we're not. And so Justin Martyr was wrong about that.
I'd be happy to speak
and
about that
this
next time.
doesn't pose a problem for Christianity.
It does, because as you said, the doctrine of the Trinity doesn't come until the 4th century. So why?
No, there were people teaching it from the beginning.
Justin
Martyr wasn't.
Robert, I let you talk. You're interrupting me now. Listen, as I said, you just said that the doctrine of the Trinity came about and was established at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century in the year 325. We can talk about it another time, because we would actually like to talk about theology. We want to talk about that 95%. So maybe we can do that another time. But the point is, and I challenge you, and I will be happy to debate this another time, that in the first 300 years of the church, you do not have a single church father, whether it be Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, if you want to go to Tertullian, although some people think he's just a church writer, down through the line up until the 4th century, they did not teach the doctrine of the Trinity, and I will defend that position anytime, any place.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.